The cub flinched when she raised her hand. She dropped it and sat on the floor instead. The slaver ship was burning when the human rescue team arrived. Smoke filled the dark hallways. Red emergency lights blinked on and off. The smell was terrible, a mix of fire, fear, and something worse that did not want to think about. Lieutenant walked slowly through the broken ship. Her boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. Behind her, 3 other soldiers followed. They were looking for survivors. The Galactic Police had destroyed the slaver ship, but they did not check if anyone was still alive inside. That was not their job. That was why humans were here. Humans were strange to the galaxy. They were not the strongest species. They did not have the best technology, but they did something that confused everyone else. They helped. They helped even when it was dangerous. They helped even when there was no reward. The galaxy did not understand this, but they accepted it. Stopped walking. She held up her hand and her team stopped too. "I hear something," she said quietly. The others listened. At first there was nothing. Then very soft they heard it too, a small sound, like breathing, like crying. It was coming from behind a broken wall. Moved forward alone. She stepped over broken metal and wires. The red light made everything look strange. She found a small space behind the wall. It was dark inside. She turned on the light attached to her helmet. 2 eyes looked back at her. His heart stopped for a moment. The eyes were big and golden. They belonged to a small creature, maybe the size of a human child. It had soft gray fur and long ears that pressed flat against its head. Its whole body was shaking. "Hey," said softly. "Hey, it's okay." The creature pushed itself deeper into the corner. It made a small, scared sound. Knew this species. They were a peaceful people from a planet far away. They were also one of the most hunted species in the galaxy. Slavers loved them because they were gentle and easy to control. They never fought back. This one was young, very young. A cub in their language could see marks on its arms, old marks. This cub had been hurt many times. Said into her radio, "I found a survivor cub, very scared. I need everyone to stay back." "Understood's voice answered, "We will wait." Looked at the cub again. It was watching her with those big golden eyes. There was no hope in those eyes, only fear, only waiting for pain. Had seen this before. She had rescued many beings from slavers. She knew what happened to them. They were beaten until they stopped fighting. They were hurt until they stopped hopping. This cub expected her to hurt it. That was all it knew. Slowly raised her hand. She wanted to show that she meant no harm. She wanted to reach out gently. The cub flinched. It was a small movement, but saw it clearly. The cub closed its eyes and turned its head away. Its small body pressed against the wall. It was waiting for the hit. It was waiting for the pain that always came after a raised hand. Something inside broke. She had been a soldier for 10 years. She had seen terrible things. She had fought in battles and watched friends die. She thought she was strong. She thought nothing could hurt her anymore. But this small creature expecting pain from a simple hand movement, this hurt more than anything. Dropped her hand. She did not try to reach out again. Instead, she did something that surprised even herself. She sat down on the floor. The metal was cold. There was dust and broken glass, but sat down anyway. She made herself small. She was no longer standing tall above the cub. Now she was at the same level. Now she was not scary. The cub opened its eyes. It looked confused. This was not what it expected. Beings who raised their hands did not sit down. They did not make themselves small. This was new. This was strange. Sat very still. She did not move. She did not speak. She just sat there, breathing slowly, looking at the cub with soft eyes. Minutes passed. The cub's shaking became a little less. Its ears moved slightly, not pressed so flat anymore. It was still scared, but it was also curious now. Waited. She had nowhere else to be. This cub was the most important thing in the universe right now. Everything else could wait. "I am not going to hurt you," said finally. Her voice was very quiet, very gentle. "I know you do not believe me. That is okay. I will wait. I will wait until you are ready." The cub did not understand her words. They spoke different languages, but maybe it understood something else. Maybe it understood that this human was different. This human sat on a dirty floor for a small, scared creature. This human did not get angry when the cub flinched. This human just waited. After a long time, the cub moved, just a little. It was not coming closer, but it was not pressing against the wall so hard anymore. It was a small thing, a tiny change, but smiled. "Good," she whispered. "Take your time. We have all the time in the world." Outside the broken wall and the other soldiers waited. They did not ask questions. They did not tell to hurry. They knew what she was doing. They knew why it was important. The galaxy thought humans were strange for caring so much. But the humans did not care what the galaxy thought. They knew something that others did not understand. Sometimes the bravest thing was not fighting. Sometimes it was sitting on a cold floor and waiting for a scared child to trust you. And was very, very brave. The rescue would take hours. The cub would not leave that corner easily. But that was okay. Would sit there for as long as it took. She would sit there until the cub understood one simple thing. Not all raised hands bring pain. Some of them bring love. The cub did not know this yet, but it would learn, would make sure of it. The human starship was called the. It was a medium-sized ship with a crew of 50 people. It traveled through space doing rescue missions and helping those who needed help. Now it had a new passenger, a small cub. The cub had no name, at least no name that anyone knew. The slavers probably called it something cruel. Numbers were common. Insults were common. Real names were not given to beings who were considered property. Decided to call the cub, it was a simple name, a gentle name. She hoped the cub would like it someday. Getting onto the ship had taken 4 hours, had sat on that cold floor until the cub finally moved. It did not come to her. It did not trust her, but it stopped shaking long enough for her to slowly, very slowly offer her hand. Not reaching, not grabbing, just offering. Had looked at that hand for a long time. Then, with small, careful steps, the cub had walked out of the corner. It did not touch. It walked around her, keeping distance, but it followed her. That was enough. Now they were on the, and was learning many things. She was learning that flinched at everything. Loud sounds made the cub freeze. Sudden movements made the cub run and hide. But the worst thing, the thing that broke's heart every time, was when she raised her hand. It did not matter why she raised her hand. It could be to wave hello to a friend. It could be to scratch her own head. It could be to point at something. Every single time flinched. The cub would close its eyes. It would pull back its ears. Its small body would become tight, waiting for the hit. After a few days, changed how she moved. She stopped raising her hand quickly. If she needed to wave, she did it slowly. If she needed to point, she pointed low. If she needed to scratch her head, she told first. "I am going to touch my hair now," she would say. "It is not about you. You are safe." The other crew members noticed. "You move differently now," said the ship's doctor. He was a tall man with kind eyes and gray hair. He had worked on rescue ships for 20 years. He had seen many things, but the cub's fear still made him sad. "I move for him," said simply. "My comfort does not matter. His feeling of safety matters." Nodded slowly. "That is very human of you." "Is that good or bad?" "The galaxy cannot decide," said with a small smile. "But I think it is good." Spent most of her free time with. The cub had been given a small room next to hers. It was simple, a soft bed, some blankets, a window that showed the stars. Spent most of the time hiding under the bed. Every day came to the room. She did not force to come out. She did not try to pull the cub from under the bed. Instead, she sat on the floor near the bed and talked. She talked about simple things. She talked about her home planet, Earth. She talked about the blue sky and the green trees. She talked about her family, her mother who made good food, her father who told bad jokes, her little brother who laughed too loud. Did not understand the words, but hoped the cub understood the feeling. She hoped her voice sounded safe. She hoped her presence started to feel normal. Days turned into a week, still flinched at raised hands, but something changed. One evening came to his room. She sat on the floor like always. She started to talk about the stars outside the window. "That one is called Vega," she said, pointing low with her finger. "It is very bright. Humans have looked at it for thousands of years. We used to think it was a god watching us." Under the bed moved. The cub's golden eyes appeared in the darkness. Kept talking, pretending not to notice. "And that one is the North Star. Well, it is called that on Earth. Here in space it looks different. Everything looks different out here." Moved again. This time the cub's head came out from under the bed. The long ears were still flat, but not completely. One ear was slightly raised, listening. His heart beat faster, but she kept her voice calm. She kept talking about stars. She did not look directly at. She knew that being watched felt scary. She watched the stars instead. "I used to be scared of space," said. "When I was young, I thought space was too big, too empty. I thought I would feel alone. But now I think it is beautiful, so much to see, so many places to go." Pulled out from under the bed, the cub sat there, still far from but visible, in the open. This was the first time it come out while was in the room. Wanted to cry, she wanted to smile and celebrate, but she did nothing. She stayed calm, she stayed still. She kept talking about stars as if nothing special was happening. Inside, though, she was screaming with joy. They sat like that for an hour, on one side of the room, on the other, not close, not touching, but together. When finally left, she moved very slowly. She stood up carefully, keeping her hands low. She walked to the door without sudden movements. "Good night," she said softly. "I will see you tomorrow." Watched her go. The cub did not flinch. In the hallway, leaned against the wall. Tears ran down her face. Happy tears, tired tears. She had never worked so hard for such a small thing. But it was not a small thing. Not to. To that scared cub, coming out from under the bed was like climbing a mountain. It was brave. It was huge. Found her crying in the hallway. "Good tears or bad tears?" he asked. "Good," said, wiping her face. "Very good." "Progress?" "Small progress, but progress." Nodded. He did not ask for details. He understood that this journey would be long. Healing from pain took time. Trust grew slowly. "The crew is talking about you," said. "They say you are changing. You move slower, you speak softer, you never raise your hands." "Is that a problem?" "No," said. "They say you are becoming like water, gentle, patient, fitting into the shape that is needed." Thought about this. She liked that description. Water was not weak. Water was powerful, but it was powerful in a quiet way. It did not force. It did not fight. It simply was, and slowly it changed everything it touched. She would be water, for she would be patient. She would be gentle. And slowly, very slowly, she would wash away the cub's fear. It would take time, but had time. She had all the time in the universe for one small, scared cub who was just starting to learn that not all hands bring pain. Some hands bring comfort. Some hands bring safety. Some hands stay down because the person attached to them cares more about your fear than their own convenience. Did not know this yet, but every day, every hour, every quiet moment together, the cub was learning. And that was enough. The Galactic delegation arrived on a Tuesday. They came in a large silver ship, shining like a mirror in the darkness of space. Inside were 5 diplomats from 5 different species. They were here to inspect the human rescue operations. They wanted to understand why humans spent so much time and resources saving others. Commander welcomed them on the docking bay. He was tall and calm, with the kind of face that made people trust him. He had led for 7 years. He was good at talking to aliens. "Welcome to our ship," said with a small bow. "We are honored by your visit." The diplomats looked around. There was a tall insect-like being with 4 arms. There was a heavy creature covered in blue scales. There was a thin being made almost entirely of light. And there were 2 others whose names were hard for humans to say. "We have heard interesting things about your ship," said. Its voice was sharp like metal scraping. "We have heard you are caring for a cub." "Yes," said. "We rescued it from a slaver ship." "We would like to see how you handle such a case," said. "The galaxy is curious about human methods." Nodded slowly. He knew this was coming. Humans were still new to the galactic community. Other species watched everything they did. They were trying to understand these strange beings who came from a small blue planet. "I can show you," said, "but I must ask you to follow some rules. The cub is very scared. Sudden movements or loud voices will hurt our progress. Please move slowly and speak quietly." The diplomats agreed, though some of them looked confused. Rules about moving and speaking. This was strange. Led them through the ship. They walked down clean white hallways. They passed crew members who nodded politely. Everything looked normal. Then they reached the room where was staying. Stopped at the door. Through the small window they could see inside. The room was simple. There was a bed, a window, some blankets, and there on the floor was Lieutenant. She was sitting on the ground with her legs crossed. Her back was against the wall. Her hands were in her lap, clearly visible, clearly still. She was talking softly, almost whispering, looking at the stars through the window. Across the room, under the bed, 2 golden eyes watched her. Made a clicking sound. "Why is your officer on the floor?" "She sits there every day," explained quietly. "The cub is more comfortable when she is at its level. Standing above the cub feels threatening." "But she is an officer," said. "She has rank. She has dignity. Why does she sit on a dirty floor for a small creature?" "Because the creature is scared," said simply, "and her dignity matters less than the creature's peace." The diplomats looked at each other. This was a strange idea. In most galactic cultures, rank meant everything. An officer sitting on the floor was wrong. It was embarrassing. Pressed its blue face closer to the window. "She is whispering. I can barely hear her. Why does she not speak normally?" "Loud voices scare," said, "so she speaks softly." "You named it." Lieutenant named it. The cub had no name before. Names are important. They mean you matter. The being made of light flickered with interest. "This is very strange behavior. Your officer changes herself for this small creature. She sits on floors. She whispers. She moves slowly. Why does she not simply train the creature to accept normal behavior?" Looked at for a long moment. He thought carefully before answering. "That is not how healing works," he said. "Was hurt badly. For a long time the cub learned that beings hurt. Beings are dangerous. Raised hands bring pain. If we force normal behavior, we only teach that humans are the same as the slavers. We only add more fear. So you change instead." "Yes, we meet where is. We do not demand that come to us. We go to slowly, gently, until is ready to trust." "But this takes so much time," said, clicking again. "Your officer has spent weeks on this floor, weeks of quiet talking. Is it worth it, for one small creature?" Inside the room something happened. The golden eyes under the bed moved forward. A small gray head appeared, looked at. The cub's ears were not flat anymore. They were slightly raised, listening. Kept talking, kept looking at the stars. She did not reach out. She did not try to touch. She just talked, her voice like a gentle stream. And then slowly moved closer. The diplomats watched in silence. The cub took small, careful steps. It stopped many times. It looked at for danger signs, but did not move, did not raise her hands, just sat there, soft and safe. Stopped about 1 meter away from. It sat down. It was still far, but it was closer than ever before. Smiled, but she did not look at. She looked at the stars and kept talking. Turned to the diplomats. "Is it worth it?" He repeated their question. "You tell me." The diplomats were silent. They had no answer. Spoke first. "I do not understand your species. You spend so much energy on small things. One cub, one damaged creature. You have wars to fight, trade to manage, enemies to watch. Why do you care so much about this?" Thought about the question. It was a fair question. It was a question humans ask themselves sometimes. "We care because caring is what makes us human," he said finally. "We could ignore the small creatures. We could focus only on big things, but then we would lose something important. We would lose ourselves." "That makes no sense," said. "Maybe not to you," agreed. "But it makes sense to us, and it makes sense to that cub will remember this. When it grows up, it will remember that humans sat on floors, humans whispered, humans waited, humans cared." "And that matters?" asked. "It matters more than anything," said. "The galaxy is full of power. Species fight for control. They fight for resources. They fight to be strong. But humans fight for something different. We fight to be kind. We fight to be good. And sometimes that fight happens on a cold floor with whispers for one small scared cub." The diplomats looked through the window again, was still sitting near. The cub's eyes were closing slowly. It was falling asleep. Near, trusting, safe. Light flickered. "I think I am starting to understand," the being said. "Your strength is not in your weapons. Your strength is not in your ships. Your strength is in your patience." "Yes," said. "Our strength is in our patience. Our strength is in our love. Our strength is in knowing that every creature matters, no matter how small or scared." The diplomats left that evening. They filed many reports about what they saw. Those reports spread across the galaxy. Species talked about the strange humans who sat on floors for frightened children. Some laughed, some were confused, but some, just a few, started to wonder. Maybe power was not the only thing that mattered. Maybe kindness was a kind of strength. Maybe the galaxy could learn something from these strange beings from Earth. Stayed on the floor. She stayed until woke up. She stayed until the cub looked at her with eyes that were just a little less scared. And she smiled, because she knew something the galaxy was just beginning to learn. Love wins. Patience wins. And sitting on the floor for someone who needs you is the most powerful thing a person can do. 2 months had passed since found in that burning ship. 2 months of sitting on floors. 2 months of quiet voices. 2 months of keeping her hands low and her movements slow. And now something wonderful was happening. Was following her. It started small. Would leave room, and a few minutes later she would hear soft footsteps behind her. She would turn around and there was, standing in the hallway, watching her with those big golden eyes. At first would run away when noticed. The cub would dash back to the room and hide under the bed, but after a few days stopped running. The cub would just stand there, watching, waiting to see what would do. Never did anything scary. She would smile softly and keep walking. She would not call out to, she would not try to get closer. She let the cub follow at its own pace. Slowly, the distance between them got smaller. First followed from 20 steps behind, then 15, then 10. Now the cub walked about 5 steps behind, close enough to see but far enough to run if needed. The crew noticed. They always noticed things about, but they were smart. They pretended not to see. They did not point or whisper. They acted like a small gray cub following an officer was the most normal thing in the world. "Has a shadow," said one day in the medical bay. He was talking to while checking some equipment. "A very cute, very fluffy shadow." Smiled. "I have noticed. The shadow hides when I look at it though." Is still scared of most people, agreed. But with there is trust now, real trust. It took a long time. Good things always take time. Nodded. He remembered the diplomats and their questions. They wanted to know if it was worth it spending so much time on one small creature. Now he had his answer. Yes. 1,000 times yes. On a quiet evening, something changed again. Was sitting in the observation deck. It was a large room with a big window that showed the stars. She liked to come here after dinner. She would sit on a bench and look at space and think about nothing. Tonight she heard soft footsteps. She did not turn around, she knew who it was. Entered the observation deck slowly. The cub looked around, checking for danger. There was no one else, just and the stars. Kept looking at the window. Her hands were in her lap, her body was relaxed. She was safe, she was not a threat. Moved closer, step by step. The cub's golden eyes were fixed on, looking for any sign of danger. There was none. Stopped right next to the bench. The cub was so close now, closer than ever before. Could hear the soft breathing. She could feel the warmth of the small body. She wanted to reach out. She wanted to pet the soft gray fur and tell that everything was okay, but she did not. She stayed still. She kept her hands in her lap. This was not about what she wanted. This was about what was ready for. For a long moment nothing happened. Just stood there breathing, watching. The stars moved slowly outside the window. The ship hummed softly around them. Then very slowly sat down. The cub sat on the floor next to the bench, right next his feet, not touching but close, so close. His heart was beating very fast now. She could feel tears forming in her eyes, but she did not move. She did not look at. She kept watching the stars, pretending that everything was normal. Minutes passed, did not run away. The cub sat there, comfortable, safe. For the first time since found, the cub was choosing to be near her. Not because there was nowhere else to go, not because the cub was trapped, but because wanted to be there. And then it happened. A small soft paw touched a knee. It was light, barely there, like a feather landing on her leg, but felt it. She felt it like an explosion in her heart. His paw was on her knee, was touching her, had chosen to reach out. The tears fell now, could not stop them. They ran down her cheeks and dropped onto her shirt, but she did not move her hands to wipe them. She stayed still. She let the tears fall. Looked up at her. The cub saw the tears. For a moment there was confusion in those golden eyes, confusion and a little fear. "Happy tears," whispered. Her voice was shaking. "These are happy tears. You are making me so happy." Did not understand the words, but the cub understood the tone. The paw stayed on its knee. It even pressed a little harder, like was saying it was okay. They sat like that for a long time, a human and a small alien, one crying quietly, one touching gently, both healing together. Near the door, crew members walked by. They saw what was happening. They saw crying and touching her knee. They saw the moment that months of patience had created. And they pretended not to notice. The ship's cook walked by with a tray of food. She glanced through the window, saw and kept walking. Her eyes were wet too, but she said nothing. A young engineer came by to check some cables. He saw the scene through the door and quickly walked away to check cables somewhere else, somewhere far away where no one would see him smile. Passed by on his evening walk. He stopped for just a moment. He looked at and he nodded once like he was saying, "Good job." Then he walked on, leaving them alone. The crew of the knew how to be silent. They knew how to protect precious moments. They knew that and needed this time, and they made sure nothing would disturb it. Eventually, got tired. The cub's eyes started closing. The paw on its knee got heavier as the small body relaxed. Did not move. She sat there, letting fall asleep next to her. She watched the stars and let her tears dry on her face. She thought about the day she found. She thought about the flinch. She thought about sitting on that cold, dirty floor in the burning ship. She thought about all the days of patience and quiet words. It was all worth it. Every second, every moment of frustration, every time she wanted to give up but did not. It was all worth it for this one feeling. A small paw on her knee, a scared creature choosing to trust, a broken heart starting to heal. This was why humans helped. This was why they spent time and resources on small things. This was why they sat on floors and whispered and moved slowly. Because moments like this existed. Because trust could be rebuilt. Because love could reach even the most scared and hurt souls. Made a small sound in sleep. The cub's ears twitched. The paw on its knee moved slightly. Smiled through her tears. "Sleep well, little one," she whispered. "I will be here when you wake up. I will always be here." Outside, the stars kept shining. The ship kept moving through space. And inside the observation deck, a human and an alien cub sat together, connected by a small touch that meant everything. Trust, hope, love. It started with a flinch. It continued with patience. And now, finally, it was blooming into something beautiful. Closed her eyes, too. She leaned her head back against the bench. She did not sleep, but she rested. She rested in the peace of this moment. The galaxy was big and scary. Bad things happened, creatures got hurt, hope got lost. But sometimes good things happened too. Sometimes patient hands and soft voices won. Sometimes a scared cub found safety. Sometimes a human sitting on the floor made all the difference. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything. 6 months had passed since the day found in the burning ship. 6 months of patience. 6 months of growth. 6 months of a miracle slowly happening. Was not the same creature anymore. The cub still had gray fur and golden eyes. The cub still had long ears and a small body, but everything else was different. The fear was almost gone. The shaking had stopped. The hiding under beds was a memory now. And today, something wonderful happened. Was in the common room, talking to about their next mission. They were going to a planet called to deliver medical supplies. It was a simple job, but important. "We should arrive in 3 days, said, looking at a map on his tablet. "The people are waiting for us." "Good," said, "I will prepare the supplies tomorrow." She did not notice entering the room. The cub moved quietly as always, but now the quiet was not about fear. It was just how moved. Felt something touch her leg. She looked down and smiled. Was standing next to her, looking up with bright eyes. "Hey, little one," said, "did you have a good nap?" Made a happy sound. The cub's ears were up now, always up, not flat against the head like before. The ears showed how felt and right now felt happy. Raised her hand. It happened naturally. She did not think about it. She just raised her hand to Pat's head like she did many times now. But she stopped. She remembered the flinch. She remembered how used to close eyes and wait for pain whenever she raised her hand. For a moment, fear touched her heart. Looked at her raised hand. And laughed. It was a small sound, like bells ringing. The language of joy. Looked its raised hand and laughed because the cub knew what was coming. Not pain, never pain, something better. His hand came down gently on his head. Her fingers touched the soft gray fur. She scratched behind the long ears, right where liked it best. His eyes closed, but not in fear, in pleasure, in peace. The cub leaned into his hand, wanting more. Watch from the side. He said nothing, but his eyes were wet. This was it. This was the moment they had worked for. A raised hand that meant love, not pain. A cub who laughed instead of flinched. A broken creature made whole again. "You did good, Lieutenant," said quietly. Looked at him, her hand was still on his head. "We all did good, the whole crew." "Yes," agreed, "but you did the most. You sat on that floor for months, you changed yourself, you gave everything." "Was worth it," said simply. Made another happy sound. The cub was now lying on the floor, enjoying the head scratches, completely relaxed. This was a creature who felt safe. This was a creature who felt loved. Word spread across the galaxy. The diplomats who visited months ago had filed their reports. Those reports were read by many species. And slowly, the story of the human and the cub became famous. It was strange what caught the galaxy's attention. Species fought great wars. Empires rose and fell. Amazing technology was invented, but the story everyone talked about was simple. A human sat on a floor for a scared child. That was all. Yet it changed something. On the planet Prime, the leaders heard about. They sent a message to thanking the humans for saving one of their children. They asked if could come home. Read the message with fear in her heart. She looked at, playing with a ball in the corner of the room. The cub was happy here. What would happen if left? But she knew it was not her choice. Had a people, had a home. She could not keep the cub just because she loved the cub. When they arrived at Prime, a crowd was waiting. Hundreds of, all with gray fur and golden eyes, stood at the spaceport. They wanted to see the miracle child. They wanted to see the human who healed it. Walked down the ramp with at her side, not behind her anymore, at her side, where the cub belonged. The crowd made soft sounds of amazement. An elder walked forward. She was old, with white fur and wise eyes. "You are the human," the elder said, "the one who sat on the floor." "I am," said. "We do not understand your people," the elder admitted. "You are strange. You do things that make no sense to us. You spend months helping one small cub when you could be doing bigger things." "Is not small to me," said, "is everything." The elder looked at. The cub was holding his hand now, not scared of the crowd, safe because was there. "We have treated your species as a mystery," the elder said. "We studied you like animals in a cage, trying to understand what made you different. Now I think I know." "What is it?" asked. "You do not measure worth by size or power. To you, a scared child is as important as a king. A broken soul is as valuable as a whole one. You see what could be, not just what is." Thought about this. It was true. Humans were like that. They saw a scared cub and imagined a happy one. They saw a broken creature and imagined a healed one. And then they worked to make that imagination real. "That is what makes you dangerous," the elder continued. "Not your weapons, not your ships, but your hope. You hope so strongly that you change the universe around you." "Is that bad?" asked. The elder smiled. It was an old smile full of wisdom. "No, child, it is wonderful and terrifying, because now the galaxy must decide what to do with a species that loves this much." The welcomed home. They had a place for the cub with a good family who would care for the child, would grow up among friends, safe and loved. But when it was time to say goodbye, did not want to leave. The cub held his hand tightly. Those golden eyes looked up at her, filled with fear and sadness. Knelt down. She was at its level now like always. Her eyes were wet, but she smiled. "I have to go," she said. "But you will be okay. You are strong now. You are brave, remember that." "Will you come back?" The question came in the language but understood. "I will visit," promised. "As often as I can. And you can send me messages. Tell me about your life. Tell me about your friends. I want to know everything." Hugged her, small arms wrapped around his neck. A soft face pressed against her shoulder. Hugged back gently, carefully, with all the love in her heart. "Thank you," whispered. "Thank you for sitting on the floor. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for teaching me that hands can be kind." Could not speak. Her throat was too tight. She just held and cried. When she finally let go, walked toward the waiting family. The cub stopped once and looked back. The ears were up. The eyes were bright. There was no fear. Was free. Watched until disappeared into the crowd. Then she walked back to the ship alone. The crew was waiting on the ramp. They did not say anything. They just stood there with her as she watched the planet below. "Ready to go?" asked finally. "Yes," said. "There are more who need help, more scared creatures, more broken souls." "There always are." "Good," said. "Then we will never be without purpose." They lifted off and flew into space. Behind them, Prime grew smaller. Ahead, the stars waited. The galaxy was changing. Slowly, species were starting to understand humans. They were not just warriors or traders. They were healers. They were hope bringers. They were the ones who sat on floors for frightened children. And that made them the most powerful species of all. Not because they could destroy, but because they could save. Not because they conquered, but because they loved. In the observation deck sat alone. She looked at the stars and thought about a small gray cub with golden eyes. She hoped was happy. She believed the cub would be. And somewhere far away, a former slave looked up at the same stars. The ears were up. The eyes were bright. And when someone raised a hand, the creature did not flinch. The creature smiled, because raised hands could mean love. A human had taught that lesson. And the galaxy would never forget.